We need some examples of tectonic hazards to look at the relationship between effects and responses in areas of contrasting levels of wealth. So, first of all, we need to look at the relationship between effects and responses. Right, so, good responses reduce effects. That's the relationship. So, let's consider the Nepal earthquake, Gorkha earthquake. 2015, Nepal is a low-income country. So, primary and secondary effects. Primary effects, they're short-term. Secondary effects, they're long-term. Primary effects, 9,000 deaths. Secondary effects, $5 billion of damages. That's between 20 to 35% of Nepal's GDP. Let's have a look at some of the responses. We've got immediate responses, long-term responses. So immediate responses, you had NGOs, they're charities like Médecins Sans Frontières and the Red Cross. So they were providing humanitarian support. Now it sounds amazing. Actually, there is a time lag because Médecins Sans Frontières and the Red Cross, they've got to get into Nepal. And when they're not in Nepal, the effects deteriorate. Soon as Médecins Sans Frontières and the Red Cross are in Nepal, then it starts to have a positive impact. That's the issue with international aid. It has to arrive before it can start having a positive impact. I also want to look at some long-term responses. Great example is charities like Geohazards International. They go into local communities and they educate locals on how to react in the event of an earthquake. Now again, that's amazing because you've got brilliant professionals with skills and expertise working with local communities, educating local communities how to react in an earthquake so they don't just marvel at the shaking. The problem is, with any charitable organisations, it is dependent on donations and donors can get fed up of donating. We call it donor fatigue. Let's have a contrasting case study. Let's have a look at the Japanese earthquake and tsunami of 2011. So that's in an HIC. It was called the Tokyo earthquake. Let's have a look at some primary and secondary impacts to start with. 18,500 deaths. That's more than Nepal. But this was a tragedy where science actually saved lives. We'll talk more about how science saved lives in the responses. Let's also consider the secondary effects. 300 billion of damages. That is significantly more than Nepal. $300 billion of damages. But it was only 5% of Japan's economy. Japan's so wealthy, it absorbed the costs effortlessly. Now let's have a look at some of the responses. And remember, this is where science saved lives. In Japan, there is an early warning system called J-Alert. Seismometers detected the shaking. Now, this network of seismometers, it took 10 seconds to detect the shaking. It gave the Japanese in Tokyo 80 seconds warning. Tokyo is a mega city with over 30 million people living there. They had 80 seconds of warning. This is why science saved lives. People were able to get out of buildings because earthquakes don't kill people, buildings do. Now, the data suggests that this was a worse tragedy, but the shaking was significantly more than Nepal, and there was a tsunami. Remember, this was the fourth greatest earthquake recorded of all time. What did the Japanese do in response to this disaster? What were the long-term responses? Well, tsunami towers, tsunami bunkers, tsunami drills. A little bit like the way we have fire drills in school. And it was upskilling like students. And actually, if you want to ask someone in Japan how to survive in an earthquake or tsunami, go to kids in schools because they get education. Why do they get education? Because there's investment. And it's that investment that actually helps us to understand how science saves lives.